if everything you've been taught about connecting with God has been backwards? What if the divine presence you've been desperately seeking in churches, through prayers, and in sacred texts has been speaking through you all along, and you've simply been too conditioned to hear it? There are two words that Jesus spoke which contain more transformative power than decades of religious practice, more healing potential than 1,000 prayers, and more truth than entire libraries of spiritual teachings. These aren't complicated theological concepts or mysterious ancient phrases that require years of study to understand. They're two simple words you use every single day, probably dozens of times without realizing you're wielding the most powerful creative force in the universe. Those two words are, I am. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I am? That's it? These are just words we use to identify ourselves, to describe our current state, to explain who we are. And that's precisely the problem. We've been using these sacred words carelessly, unconsciously, attaching them to limitations and conditions without understanding their true nature. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up and immediately think, I'm tired. You look at your bank account and declare, I am broke. You feel physical discomfort and claim, I am sick. You face a challenge and announce, I am afraid. With each of these innocent-sounding statements, you're doing something profoundly significant, something that's been shaping your entire reality without your awareness. Here's the hidden truth that changes everything. When you say, I am, you're not just describing yourself. You're not simply making an observation about your temporary condition. You're speaking with the voice of the infinite, declaring what God is experiencing through you in that moment. And here's what might shock you. The universe has no choice but to arrange itself around whatever you attach to those two words. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely revolutionize not just how you pray or meditate, but how you experience every single moment of your existence. This isn't about adopting a new religious belief or joining a different spiritual tradition. This is about recognizing something that Smith Wigglesworth spent his entire ministry trying to reveal, a truth so fundamental that once you truly grasp it, you can never see yourself, God, or your circumstances the same way again. For centuries, we've been operating under what might be the greatest spiritual misconception ever perpetuated. The idea that God is somewhere else, somewhere distant, somewhere out there that we must reach through enough devotion, enough sacrifice, enough spiritual practice. We've been taught to seek the divine in external places, sacred buildings, holy texts, religious authorities. We've been conditioned to believe that connecting with God requires intermediaries, special rituals, or years of dedicated effort. But what if this entire paradigm has been inverted? What if the separation you feel isn't real? What if every time you say, I am, infinite consciousness is declaring its presence as you, through you, in this exact moment? The implications of this understanding are staggering, and they extend far beyond philosophical concepts into practical, tangible transformation in every area of your life, your health, your relationships, your finances, your sense of peace and purpose. And it all begins with recognizing what's actually happening when you speak these two extraordinary words. Think about the most famous declaration Jesus ever made. I am the way, the truth, and the life. For 2,000 years, religious traditions have interpreted this as Jesus claiming something unique about himself, something that set him apart from the rest of humanity, something that made him special while keeping everyone else ordinary. But what if we've completely missed the point? What if Jesus wasn't making a statement about his exclusive status, but revealing the fundamental nature of consciousness itself? When he spoke those words, he wasn't saying, I, this man named Jesus, am uniquely the way. He was demonstrating that the I speaking through him, that same I that speaks through you right now, is the divine presence individualized. He was showing us that what we casually call I isn't our limited human personality at all. It's the voice of infinite intelligence, expressing itself uniquely as each person's being. This revelation completely transforms everything we think we understand about our relationship with the divine. The profound impact of this recognition is that you're not a separate entity trying to connect with God somewhere out there. You are the point where infinite consciousness is experiencing itself in this particular form, in this specific moment. The transformation that happens when this shifts from intellectual concept to lived experience is nothing short of revolutionary. Your entire journey changes from seeking something you lack to recognizing what has always been present. But here's where the hidden truth becomes uncomfortable, even shocking. If I am is indeed God speaking through you, then every single time you attach those words to a limitation, you're doing something extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily destructive. When you wake up and declare, I am exhausted, you're not just describing how you feel. You're claiming that the infinite presence expressing as you is tired. When you look at your circumstances and announce, I am broke, you're stating that God, the I of your being, is experiencing lack. When you face a health challenge and say, I am sick, you're declaring that infinite life itself is limited by illness. If this resonates with where you are right now, subscribe to continue exploring these transformative truths together. Can you see the magnitude of what's happening in these seemingly innocent statements? This is the behind-the-scenes mechanism of how most human suffering perpetuates itself. We've been unknowingly using the most creative force in existence to reinforce the very conditions we desperately want to change. Every, I am worried. Every, I am not enough. Every, I am failing. These aren't passive observations. They're active declarations that attach divine power to temporary circumstances, making those circumstances feel permanent and unchangeable. The mindset shift required here isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. It's about recognizing the proper relationship between your eternal identity and the temporary conditions flowing through your experience. One is who you truly are. The other is simply what's appearing right now in the theater of consciousness. When you say, I am afraid, you're confusing the screen with the movie playing on it. You're identifying the unchanging awareness with the changing content of that awareness. And that confusion is what keeps you trapped in cycles of limitation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens when you begin to recognize this pattern in real time, when you catch yourself in the act of misusing these sacred words and choose differently, because the revelations that emerge from this practice extend far beyond theory into tangible transformation in every aspect of your life. Write in the comments, I'm recognizing this pattern, if you've started noticing how often you attach I am to temporary conditions throughout your day. The greatest misconception about spiritual awakening is that it's something you achieve after years of meditation, countless hours of practice, or following the right teacher long enough. We've been conditioned to believe that enlightenment is somewhere ahead of us, waiting at the end of a long journey of self-improvement. But what if the entire framework is inverted? What if awakening isn't about becoming something you're not, but simply stopping your identification with what you never were in the first place? Your authentic identity as I am isn't something you need to develop, cultivate, or earn. It's not hiding behind layers of unworthiness that you must peel away through spiritual effort. The revelation that changes everything is recognizing that this identity already exists as your true nature right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. The journey isn't about adding spiritual qualities to yourself. It's about subtracting the false beliefs you've accumulated about who you think you are. Think about it this way. You don't become awareness. You already are awareness. You don't achieve consciousness. You are consciousness experiencing itself through this unique perspective. The transformation isn't in the acquiring, but in the releasing, not in the doing, but in the undoing. Every spiritual practice, every meditation, every moment of prayer that actually works is simply creating space for you to recognize what has always been true beneath the noise of conditioned thinking. This shifts the entire mindset around personal growth and spiritual development. You're not a broken person trying to fix yourself. You're not an incomplete being striving to become whole. Your infinite presence temporarily confused about its own nature. And the confusion itself is the only problem that needs addressing. The impact of this understanding on your daily experience is profound because it removes the pressure of constantly trying to improve, achieve, or become. Now here's where language becomes critically important in this journey, because the words you use reveal whether you're speaking from your true identity or from the false self. There's a subtle but absolutely revolutionary distinction between saying, "I am experiencing pain in this body," and saying, "I am in pain." Can you feel the difference? One statement acknowledges a temporary condition appearing within your awareness, like clouds passing through the sky. The other statement identifies the eternal you with that temporary condition, as if the sky itself became the cloud. When you say, "I am in pain," you're claiming that pain defines your being, that it's woven into your identity, that you and the pain are one inseparable thing. But when you say, "I am experiencing pain in this body," you're maintaining the proper relationship between the unchanging witness and the changing experience. You're recognizing that sensations, emotions, and circumstances are events happening within consciousness, not to consciousness itself. This seemingly small shift in language carries the power to revolutionize how you relate to every challenge, every difficulty, every unwanted condition in your life. The hidden truth is that most suffering doesn't come from the condition itself, but from our identification with it. Physical pain is an experience. Emotional distress is an experience. Financial lack is an experience. But the I am that you truly are remains untouched, unchanged, unlimited by any of these passing conditions. Behind the scenes of your conscious mind, this linguistic distinction is creating either bondage or freedom with every statement you make. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by showing you how this plays out in real situations, because understanding the principle intellectually is one thing, but witnessing its practical application in actual lives reveals the true magnitude of this teaching. Comment below, language creates reality. If this distinction between experiencing conditions versus being those conditions is starting to make sense. Once you truly grasp that I am is divine presence speaking through you, something fascinating happens automatically. You become acutely aware of the words you attach to this sacred phrase. It's not about policing your language or forcing yourself to speak positively. It's a natural consequence of recognizing the creative power you're wielding with every declaration. The transformation happens organically, because you can't unknow what you've come to understand about the nature of these two words. Instead of carelessly saying, "I am sick," you begin to recognize something more accurate, more true. I am is perfect wholeness, infinite life itself, expressing through this body which is currently showing symptoms. Notice the shift? You're not denying the physical experience or pretending the symptoms don't exist. You're simply refusing to identify your eternal being with a temporary condition. Instead of declaring, I'm broke, you acknowledge I am is infinite abundance, limitless supply, currently expressing through this particular financial situation. The circumstances haven't changed yet, but your relationship to them has fundamentally transformed. This isn't semantic gymnastics or spiritual word games. Behind the scenes of your consciousness, you're making critical decisions about identity with every statement. When you speak from the truth of your being rather than from temporary appearances, you're aligning yourself with reality instead of illusion. The impact on your emotional state, your mental clarity, and even your physical well-being begins to shift because you're no longer carrying the weight of false identification. Nowhere does this become more evident than in the arena of healing. Think about the automatic response when illness appears in your body. The immediate thought is, I am sick and I need to be healed. This seemingly natural reaction actually creates a profound problem. You've just identified your core being with the illness, and you've placed the solution somewhere in the future, making it dependent on something external changing. This mindset generates desperate struggle, fear, anxiety, and a sense of powerlessness that often makes the condition worse. But when you understand I am consciousness, the entire paradigm shifts. The revelation is this: the divine awareness at your core, the infinite spirit that is your true identity, cannot be sick. How could eternal life itself experience illness? How could infinite wholeness be broken or damaged? The body may indeed be showing symptoms. The physical form may be experiencing distress. But that's not the I that you truly are. The body is within your awareness, not the other way around. This understanding transforms healing from desperate struggle into peaceful recognition. You're not fighting against a condition that defines you. You're simply acknowledging that a temporary experience is appearing within consciousness while remaining anchored in the truth of your being. The journey shifts from, I need to get healed, to, I am is already whole, and this recognition allows the body to align with that wholeness. Can you feel how different those two approaches are energetically? One comes from lack and fear. The other comes from truth and peace. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by sharing real stories of people who experience this shift firsthand. Because when you hear how this played out in actual circumstances, the abstract becomes concrete, and the theoretical becomes practical. Type, I'm ready for wholeness in the comments if you're beginning to see how your own identification with conditions might be perpetuating them. What makes this teaching so revolutionary is how it completely transcends the endless cycle of spiritual techniques that dominate modern spirituality. Everywhere you look, there's another method promising transformation if you just do it correctly. Visualize your desires in vivid detail. Repeat affirmations 100 times daily. Perform specific rituals at precise times. Meditate with particular intentions to manifest outcomes. The entire spiritual marketplace has become an exhausting series of actions you must perform to get what you think you lack. But Smith Wigglesworth revealed something that cuts through all of that effortful striving. I am isn't a technique you practice or an action you perform. It's a recognition of what already is. This single revelation transforms your entire spiritual journey from doing to being, from endless effort to simple awareness, from desperately trying to create what you believe you're missing to recognizing the infinite fullness that has been present all along. The impact of this shift cannot be overstated because it removes you from the exhausting treadmill of spiritual performance. If this brought you clarity or peace, alike helps others discover these life-changing principles. Think about the hidden truth behind most manifestation practices. They operate from an assumption of lack. You visualize what you want because you believe you don't have it. You affirm abundance because you feel broke. You perform rituals because you think something is missing. The very foundation of these practices reinforces the separation between you and what you desire. But I am consciousness works differently. It's not about creating something external. It's about recognizing what you already are at your core. This brings us to a story that illustrates this principle with stunning clarity. There was a woman named Margaret who suffered with chronic pain for 7 relentless years. The pain was debilitating, affecting every aspect of her life, yet doctors could find no physical cause. She tried everything modern medicine offered, explored alternative therapies, and practiced various healing modalities. Nothing worked. The pain persisted, and with each passing year, her hope diminished, while her identification with the condition grew stronger. When Margaret finally encountered Smith Wigglesworth, she arrived expecting what she'd received from everyone else: prayers on her behalf, healing exercises to practice, spiritual techniques to master. But Wigglesworth approached her situation from an entirely different angle. He didn't pray for her healing. He didn't prescribe any practices. Instead, he asked her a single penetrating question: who is the I that says I am in pain? Margaret was confused at first. Obviously, it was her experiencing the pain. Who else could it be? But Wigglesworth pressed further with questions that would catalyze a profound revelation. Is the I am you speak of capable of pain? Can infinite spirit hurt? Can God suffer? For nearly 20 minutes, Margaret sat in silence as these questions worked their way through her consciousness. The transformation happening behind the scenes was a complete dismantling of her identity structure. She began to recognize that she'd been making a fundamental error for 7 years. She'd been identifying her true self, the eternal I am, with a body and its sensations. The pain didn't belong to who she truly was. It belonged to a false sense of self she'd been claiming as her identity. Within 3 weeks of this recognition, her pain began to diminish. Within 2 months, it had completely dissolved. Not because she fought against it with new techniques or stronger willpower, but because she stopped claiming it as defining her being. The journey from chronic suffering to complete freedom happened through a shift in understanding, not through effort or struggle. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens when this same principle applies to other areas of life. Because if it works for physical healing, the question becomes, where else does this transformation of identity create radical change? Leave a comment saying, "Identity shifts everything," if Margaret's story is resonating with something you've experienced or witnessed in your own life. The principle of I am consciousness extends far beyond physical healing into every area of human experience, including the realm where most people feel the most vulnerable and powerless, their financial circumstances. Consider Robert, a businessman whose company was drowning in debt, watching everything he'd built over decades crumbling around him. Each morning he would wake with the same heavy thoughts. I am failing. I am losing everything. I am going bankrupt. His prayers became desperate pleas for God to rescue him from somewhere outside himself, to send customers, to provide a miracle, to save him from impending disaster. The transformation in Robert's journey began when he encountered this teaching about I am, and recognized the devastating pattern he'd been perpetuating. He'd been claiming lack as his very identity, declaring with divine authority that he was defined by financial collapse. The mindset shift he made was radical yet simple. Before checking emails or financial statements each morning, he would sit quietly and recognize a different truth. I am is the abundance of God. I am is infinite resource. I am is divine intelligence expressing through this business. The impact wasn't instantaneous. This is important to understand because we've been conditioned to expect immediate results, and when they don't appear, we abandon the truth for desperate action. Over 4 months, not 4 days, something began shifting behind the scenes of Robert's consciousness. Innovative ideas emerged that had been invisible to him before. Unexpected connections appeared through seemingly random encounters. Opportunities unfolded that his previous mindset of lack couldn't have recognized even if they were right in front of him. His business didn't merely survive. It evolved into something more aligned with his true purpose and more sustainable than what existed before. But perhaps the most profound application of this principle appears in relationships, particularly when someone we love is caught in destructive patterns. There was a mother whose son had been trapped in the cycle of drug addiction for years. She'd exhausted every conventional approach, interventions, therapy programs, tough love strategies, enabling behaviors. Nothing worked. Each cycle of hope and disappointment broke her heart more completely. When she came to Smith Wigglesworth, she was utterly depleted, drowning in guilt, desperately seeking someone who could fix her child. What Wigglesworth told her was shocking, almost offensive to conventional thinking. He said, "Stop praying for your son to change. Stop seeing him as an addict. Stop identifying him with his condition." Instead, he directed her toward a revolutionary recognition. Her son's real identity is I am, the presence of God individualized. That presence cannot be addicted. That presence is whole, free, and perfect right now, regardless of what appears in behavior or circumstance. The hidden truth he was revealing is that every time we identify someone with their condition, my addicted son, my depressed friend, my difficult partner, we're anchoring them to that limited identity in our consciousness, and consciousness creates reality. For 6 months, this mother practiced a discipline more challenging than any physical task. She held steadfast to seeing only the truth of her son's being, not the appearance of his behavior. Some days the situation seemed worse, and everything in her wanted to return to fear and control. But she continued recognizing the divine presence expressing as her son. The breakthrough came gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. Something shifted in him. He entered treatment on his own initiative, and unlike previous attempts, he stayed committed to the process. Years later, he remains free from addiction, not because she changed him through her efforts, but because she stopped empowering the false identity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this isn't just crisis intervention but a complete way of living. Because once you understand this principle, it begins transforming every single interaction and decision you make throughout your day. Right? Consciousness shapes reality. In the comments, if these stories are illuminating how powerful our identification truly is. The revolutionary aspect of I am Consciousness is that it's not something you practice only during meditation sessions or save for crisis moments. This isn't a spiritual tool you pull out when things go wrong and then put back on the shelf when life returns to normal. The transformation happens when this recognition integrates into every single moment of your daily experience, becoming the foundational lens through which you perceive and interact with reality itself. Think about the simple act of waking up each morning. Most people's first thoughts are variations of, "I'm so tired, I don't want to get up," or, "I have too much to do today." But when you understand I am consciousness, that moment becomes an opportunity for recognition. Instead of identifying with fatigue, you acknowledge I am awake, not as a tired person facing another exhausting day, but as infinite consciousness expressing in this moment, fully present and aware. The subtle shift in language reflects a massive shift in identity. This continues throughout your day in ways that might seem almost too simple to matter, yet the cumulative impact is profound. While eating, instead of mindlessly consuming food, you can recognize I am sustained by infinite substance. During work activities, rather than struggling through tasks as a limited human trying to accomplish things through personal effort alone, you acknowledge I am is the intelligence accomplishing this task. Can you see what's happening here? You're shifting the entire foundation of your experience from human struggling to divine presence having a human experience. The journey from ordinary consciousness to I am awareness happens in these seemingly mundane moments, not in dramatic spiritual experiences or transcendent meditation states. Behind the scenes of your awareness, each recognition is rewiring your fundamental sense of identity. You're no longer carrying the burden of making everything happen through strain and willpower. You're allowing infinite intelligence to express through you naturally, without the exhausting sense of personal responsibility for outcomes you can't control. But what about those moments when circumstances become overwhelming? When fear floods your system, when crisis demands immediate response? Smith Wigglesworth taught a technique so simple it seems almost ridiculous, yet so powerful, it has transformed countless situations that appeared hopeless. He called it the pause. When you find yourself consumed by fear, when problems seem impossible, when panic threatens to take over completely, you deliberately pause everything. You don't immediately react. You don't frantically start problem solving. You don't allow the momentum of fear to carry you into desperate action. In that intentional pause, you return your attention to one essential question. What is the truth of my being right now? Not what appears to be happening, not what the circumstances suggest, not what fear is screaming, but what is eternally true beneath all appearances. The answer is always the same. I am is the presence of God, untouched by any condition. I am is whole. I am is supplied. I am is safe. This isn't positive thinking or denial. It's anchoring your consciousness in what is more real than the temporary crisis. A woman practiced this technique during a terrifying medical diagnosis. Her doctor discovered a mass and scheduled immediate surgery. Terror consumed her, but she remembered the pause. Each time fear arose, and it arose constantly, she would stop, take a breath, and return to the truth of her being. She didn't deny the diagnosis or refuse treatment. She simply refused to identify her eternal self with a temporary condition. By the time of her pre-surgery scan, the mass had completely disappeared. The medical team had no explanation, but she understood the hidden truth behind what had occurred. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle completely transforms not just individual circumstances, but your entire relationship with supply and abundance, because the revelations that emerge when you apply I am consciousness to material provision challenge everything conventional wisdom teaches about security and source. Comment: the pause changes everything. If you're beginning to see how powerful this simple practice could be in your own life, perhaps nowhere does I am consciousness challenge conventional thinking more directly than in our relationship with material supply and abundance. We've been deeply conditioned from childhood to believe that resources come from specific external sources. Your job provides your money, your clients provide your income, your investments provide your security. This seemingly logical framework creates a foundation of perpetual fear that most people don't even recognize they're living on. What happens if I lose my job? What if my clients leave? What if the market crashes? The anxiety becomes a constant undercurrent to life, always humming in the background of your decisions. But the hidden truth that I am consciousness reveals completely inverts this paradigm. The source is never outside you. Your employer isn't actually your source of supply. Your clients aren't your source. Your investments, your business, your inheritance, none of these are the source. The I am that you truly are is your source, and that source is infinite, inexhaustible, and eternally flowing. This isn't metaphysical fantasy. It's a practical recognition that transforms how you move through the world. Think about the impact of this shift. When you know that the channels through which supply appears may change, but the source never fails, you operate from an entirely different mindset. One job ends, and instead of panic, you recognize that new channels will open. One stream of income diminishes, and 3 others emerge that you couldn't have orchestrated through human planning. The journey from fear-based striving to source-based living brings a sense of security that no external circumstances can touch, because it's not dependent on anything external remaining constant. When you pay bills, instead of anxiety about diminishing resources, you can recognize I am is infinite supply making itself visible through these transactions. When you work, rather than laboring from a sense of lack, you recognize I am is the substance of my abundance expressing through this activity. When you give, instead of fear about depletion, you acknowledge I am gives from infinite fullness, not from personal limitation. Can you see how this completely transforms the emotional and spiritual quality of every financial interaction? This same principle revolutionizes relationships in ways that might surprise you. Most relationship struggles stem from a fundamental misconception that we're incomplete beings who need someone else to fill our emptiness. You feel unloved, so you search desperately for someone to love you. You feel insecure, so you seek someone to validate you. This places impossible demands on human relationships and virtually guarantees disappointment because no person can complete what is already whole. But when you recognize I am is infinite love, that love is the very nature of your being, everything changes at the foundation. You're no longer seeking love from outside yourself. You're expressing the love that you already are. The transformation isn't about finding the right person or using better relationship techniques. It's about shifting from needing completion to sharing wholeness. There was a woman who, after 3 failed marriages, finally understood this principle. Instead of immediately seeking another relationship to make her happy, she spent an entire year practicing the recognition of herself as complete. I am is infinite love and joy. When she eventually met someone new, the relationship had an entirely different quality than anything she'd experienced before. No desperation, no clinging, no fear of loss, just 2 whole people choosing to share life together. 20 years later, that partnership continues to thrive because it was built on truth rather than need. The revelation that changed everything for her was a shift in the fundamental question she was asking. Instead of, who will love me and make me complete? She began asking, how can I express the love that I am? This single mindset shift redirected her entire life journey from seeking to expressing, from lack to fullness, from needing to sharing. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing the real challenges you'll face on this journey, because understanding these principles intellectually and actually living them through difficult circumstances are 2 very different experiences. Type sources within in the comments if you're beginning to recognize how your security and love have always been inside you, not in external circumstances or people. If you've made it all the way to this point in the video, I want to acknowledge something significant. You didn't just watch content, you've engaged with a truth that has the power to transform everything about how you experience your life. The fact that you're still here tells me something about your journey, about your readiness to see beyond surface-level spirituality into something that actually creates real change. This channel exists to explore these profound principles that shift us from struggling humans to conscious expressions of divine presence. Each week we dive into teachings that matter, insights that land differently because they're addressing the root rather than just treating symptoms. If this resonates with where you are right now, I'd genuinely love to have you as part of this community. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming, because we're going deeper into these transformative truths with every video. And here's something I'd really appreciate. Leave a comment below saying this message was meant for me, if you felt that spark of recognition while watching, that sense that you were supposed to encounter this teaching at exactly this moment in your life. Those comments create a beautiful connection among everyone on this journey together. And honestly, reading them reminds me why this work matters. If this video brought you value, clarity, or even just a moment of peace in recognizing who you truly are, a like helps others discover these timeless principles that have the power to change lives from the inside out. There's a video right here that explores how to maintain this I am consciousness during life's most challenging moments, when everything is pushing you to forget what you've just learned. Click and continue with me there as we deepen this practice together. Until next time, remember, you're not seeking what you already are.